Tighten it a little bit here. Good. That thing's low. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call special meeting of council to order Monday, February 10th, 2020. Approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Majinski.
That the Monday, February 10th, 2020 special council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder. Councilor Norbury. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. There are none. So moving on to consent agenda. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
That all items in the Monday, January 6th. Sorry. Yeah, January 6th, 2020 consent agenda be moved for information.
Second. Councilor Korkalka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Council want to bring anything up for discussion? Okay. Bylaws 8.1, short-term rentals and parking. A report from Deputy Director of Corporate Services dated February 10th, 2020 regarding short-term rentals and parking. Recommendation, please. Councilor Majinski.
That the second reading of the zoning amendment bylaw number 685/2020 is rescinded.
Second. Councilor Norbury. Any discussion? Councilor Howe.
So we're just rescinding the part on set mark here that goes from 2 units to 1 or 1 unit to 2.
I think we're rescinding the second reading of the zoning amendment bylaw to include the parking stipulations there. We have to rescind the second reading to add the amendment. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Second recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
That the zoning amendment bylaw number 685/2020 be read for a second time as amended.
Seconder. Councilor Majinski. Comments? Councilor Howe.
So I'm not in favor of this. I don't think that only having 2 per establishment of a short-term rental is the way to go. I'm concerned about multiple dwelling units. There's one on Airbnb right now that has 6 units on it. So if that were to be rented out to 6 different employees of a company, there's potential there to have 4 vehicles parked on the roadway. That's just one example of the 4 that are listed on the website, so I have concerns about that.
Okay. Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, so I think with this change, I'm in favor of the change. I understand what Councilor Howe was saying about the multiple vehicles on roads, but I believe that is not an issue that is specific to Airbnb. We have current residents that have multiple that use the street for parking, and I think if that's an issue we want to bring up, that should be a separate issue. We should make amendments to file that issue.
Councilor Korkalka.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I'm not in favor of this. And the reason is, I mean, never mind when it's summertime, but when it's wintertime and we have the extra 4 or 5 vehicles parked in the street and we're trying to do snow removal, I see that really hindering our public works department. They already get hindered now when one person is visiting somebody or staying with somebody, they got 1 car on the street. And the way you go around it, and then you get the complaints of people being snowed in on their driveway because the way public works has to go around it. So I'm not in favor of changing the parking regulations for this area.
Yeah. Councilor Howe.
Now my concern is I think that we're making multi-unit dwellings out of single-family residences, and that to me is the concern. There is that that's not regulated well enough that we can look at the 4 examples that are on the Airbnb right now, and if that one home that has 6 places available were to fall under this bylaw, they could park 2 there and then 4 on the roadway. The residential structure, the way the roads are created in Tumble Ridge, the way our sidewalks are laid out, the way our garbage bins are picked up, the way we have to have access to our fire hydrants, is not conducive to allow 4 additional vehicles on the roadway in houses like that. So to me, it was established last council meeting by this council that we consider these a business. This is a business expense. If you want to have multiple vehicles at your home, you have to have multiple parking spots for those vehicles off-road. They're not part of the community. They don't pay the taxes in Tumbler Ridge. They don't know the rules and regulations about what day our garbage is picked up. They're not going to be as aware of that, I should say. They're not going to be as aware of how our roads are plowed and that we expect the vehicles off the road as you would with a resident, because these are short-term people coming in and out. That's why these things are established in our bylaws way before we ever came in on council, is to prevent instances like this. And to me, if you want to rent out 4 rooms in your property, it's perfectly reasonable in my mind that you have 4 stalls off the road to accommodate the neighbors in your area. I think that's completely reasonable. And that's why I think it should stay the way that it is. It should be 1 per guest room.
Councillor Norbury?
So I don't disagree with you, Councillor Howe and Elka, but why are we targeting just Airbnb for this bylaw? We're trying, this should be something that we should be addressing if we have issues of too many people parking on the streets. We should be addressing that as a whole and not just for Airbnb, because the issues that you're talking about, they're currently happening now, right? And they could also be happening in family dwellings where you just have multiple family members that have vehicles. So I don't think we should be targeting Airbnbs for all these regulations. If this is something we want to look at in a broader community aspect, I'm all for that. But for just Airbnbs, I think having them in line with our current residential bylaws is sufficient.
Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. There's a few things here. I checked into insurance for the Airbnb, and they just did a policy in Dawson today, and it's $5,500 a year. So that's going to, I think, diminish the number of applicants, I think, because it's, for one thing, cost prohibitive. And the other thing is Airbnb, I think, are for the most part for groups, because if you're going to go in and rent a house, you're not going to have 4 or 5 different people sharing a kitchen. I don't think that's the intent of an Airbnb, because I think what you want is you want a group of people coming in, and they'll probably be carpooling. So I think that's going to negate a lot of the parking problems, because you're not going to have that many vehicles. Like you say, you have 6 units, but I think they're probably going to be either a group or a family. So that problem is going to be probably not as large as we think it's going to be. So I realize parking could be an issue, but I don't think that Airbnb is going to be a big part of this, because that's not the intent of the Airbnb. That's more of a bed and breakfast.
I agree. Councillor Howe?
The problem with carpooling, or probably is going to be carpooling. Like, again, I think Councillor Lehman, I think that's a bit of a stretch. You don't really know what it's going to be used for. You're assuming that it's probably going to be carpooling, and it's probably going to be people doing this. In my experience at Tumbler Ridge, the folks that are renting the homes short term for 2 weeks or less are quite often workers. And those workers quite often come to Tumbler Ridge in their own vehicles, and then they have a service or a work vehicle that they travel to and from the mine with to do their equipment. Those are the pieces of equipment that I see on the road. I understand your concern that it could be a family, and you've got a mother in one room and father and whatever, 2 kids over here, and that's why we don't need vehicle parking for 4. But if it is, they're only going to have 1 vehicle, and there won't be an issue. They'll be in there. But if they have they have to have the provisions in place so that if that doesn't work out that way, and that it's 4 snowmobilers coming to town, or 4 groups of snowmobilers, they're all sharing the same home, they have to have off-road parking for all those vehicles. So in the circumstance that it's a family, it's not an issue. We're not going to see it anyways. But they have to provide the parking stalls to get them off the road.
Okay. Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. We definitely have to look at the differentiation between the Airbnbs or the short-term rentals and the crew houses. And I think the crew houses are the biggest issue because they're there day in and day out. Those vehicles are on the roads all the time. with these short-term rentals, people are in and out, they could be out, and it's not to say that they're gonna be here while there's a snowfall, but they'll be here most likely only for 1 week, so that gives time for snow removal and crews to come in and do their cleanup, because we're not doing snow removal 30 minutes after the snowfall or a big storm, right? So I think we do have time and leeway there. And if it is a short-term rental, the onus is on the owner of that home to either educate the people that are there for garbage removal, or they have to take that on themselves as a business owner. So they do have to treat it like a business, and they have to clean up those homes and make them presentable, clean, and livable. And they're the ones that are ultimately going to have to be doing the yard work, everything else, where a lot of that gets kind of lost with the crew houses. They like to pass that buck on to somebody else. So.
Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Councillor Howe, I don't have a problem with 1 for 1 because it's a good way to control the parking. But I'm just saying that because I still think most of them are going to be groups, I don't think that's going to be an issue for those. But I think that's probably an easy way to control it. So if you have 1 for 1, you eliminate the problem. So I'm fine with that.
Councillor Howell?
Is insurance for Airbnbs going to be a prerequisite that our bylaw or staff is going to be checking into?
Through the business license, I believe so, Mr. Wall.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Councillor Howell?
So just to revise, what we're voting on here right now is what?
Recommendation is the zoning amendment bylaw 685/2020 be read for a second time as amended.
As amended, so that is 2 per establishment.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, call to question. All in favor? Opposed? I forget. Defeated. Okay.
Mayor?
Councillor Howell?
Put an alternate recommendation on the board.
Okay.
And that recommendation could have. Just find that out here again. I guess it would be an amendment to it. Actually, it's not an amendment, it would be the original one that says 1 per guest room. 1 parking stall is required per guest room.
Okay. Got that, Jane? Seconder? Councillor Korkalka, comments? Mr. Wall?
So one of the reasons we were looking for clarification on this, and council can still go down the path of 1 per guest room, is just the booking styles of Airbnbs. If we say 1 per guest room, if you rent out 1 room in the house, are you providing, is the establishment owner required to provide 1 parking spot for each room you have in your house? Or are we saying that if you have 4 bedrooms in your house, but you're only renting it out to 1 person, do you still need to provide 4 parking spaces? So is the parking requirement dictated by the structure of your home or by the structure of your business?
Yeah, I mean, we could possibly say adequate parking off street for the amount of rooms that you have available, or the amount of occupants that you have, you know. Councillor Howell?
Yeah, not adequate parking is defined in our bylaws. It's 3 meters by 4.5 or 5 or whatever it is that's in there.
To me, it's for each room that you rent for lodging.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if we're getting confused on, you know, a bedroom as compared to a living room or whatever, but if you're renting out these rooms, if you advertise on Airbnb that you rent out 6 rooms, that you should have, if your lot will allow for it, 6 parking stalls.
That's what I'm saying we should have.
And that provides both sides of it, that if you bring a family in and you only have 2 cars, you're fine, and you're rented in those other rooms. It's the onus is on the owner of the Airbnb to provide off-street parking.
They are inconvenience the people that are in the area already, that didn't buy homes thinking there was going to be an Airbnb next door to them.
So to not inconvenience the residents of Tumbler Ridge for 3 or 4 of these units that are in Tumbler, keep your vehicles off the street. And that to me solves both sides of the problem.
It allows for the families to come in,
And it also allows for, if there is 4 vehicles coming in with a group booking for snowmobiles or work trucks or whatever, all the vehicles can be parked off-site at that location.
So I'm just wondering if we want to amend that motion. Because at the moment we have one, Jane, could you please read it back?
But 1 parking stall is required per guest room.
Okay. Councillor Norbury?
It might be best that we ask staff just to come back with the new bylaw with the proposed changes to that have a little more accurate wording that we're looking for per rental room versus per room in the house. Like that's where we need to be giving direction. Yeah.
Councillor Howe?
And I think, I don't know, I think it's there. I think like in our own bylaws, it says dwelling unit for some things. But this one says specifically was originally per guest room. To me, with, you know, guest room, maybe it needs to be defined in the bylaw, but to me, that's what it means, is that each room that you advertise that you're renting is what your guest room is. That you're gonna rent that particular room, you better have a parking stall for that particular vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's clear enough. Mr. Wall?
And again, one of the reasons we're seeking clarification is that guest room terminology is coming from the bed and breakfast, where when you're going to a bed and breakfast, you're specifically renting out one room as a guest room, and where it gets confusing here on the Airbnbs and why, you know, maybe if council wants to go down this path, we set the regulation that Airbnbs are not allowed to provide on-street parking. You have to have all of your parking off-street, or you're allowed, you know, whatever you can do off +1 on-street parking, something like that. Because if we go down this language of guest rooms, again, where it gets confusing is if you advertise, now let's say you don't advertise, you got 6 rooms for rent, you advertise you have 1 house for rent, which has 6 rooms. So is that 1 parking spot or is that 6 parking spots? And that's where we're trying to find that clarification. So maybe the better way to go about it, if council wants to go to this, is say, okay, you can have as many cars as you want, or as many cars as you can provide on off-street, as many cars as you can provide on off-street +1, as many cars as you can provide on off-street +2. That might be a way to go about it as well.
Council? Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I kind of am swaying towards the idea of having, if you're going to have a short-term rental, it'll state in your rental unit, only 2 parking stalls are provided, and then anything else will be not considered, or I don't know if we can enforce that through bylaw or whatever, but instead of saying, okay, 6 rooms, need 6 stalls, because that's going to really limit who can actually do a short-term rental in this community, because a lot of homes do not have spaces for 4 more vehicles. So I'm thinking maybe, say, as the owner of the home that's going to be doing these short-term rentals, be very specific on how many vehicles are allotted per that home.
Mm-hmm. According to parking space. Councillor Howe?
And that's exactly the reason why I'm proposing this, is because I want them off street. If you take a street like Speaker is very cluttered with vehicles. Some of the homes have hardly any ability to even get a camper or anything into their backyard. They are very, very tight. The driveways are very narrow, and the spacing between the homes is narrower than other places in Tumbler Ridge. If you had one of those homes that had 6 places in it, it is going to be an extreme inconvenience to the folks that are down there. So if it's not realistic that you can get all the vehicles off the road, then I don't think you should be able to park there. That's the reason why I want this in place that says all your vehicles. If you want to rent out 4, you better have parking for 4. And I understand where Mr. Wall is coming from, that, you know, they could change their advertisement and say the home is for rent and it has 6 bedrooms in it, or it has whatever, and they could skew it or however they want to.
Just with that wording of guest room, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the right solution is on that there, but it should be
Provided that if every vehicle, you cannot have any on-street parking. You know, like if they want to rent out 4 rooms or whatever, that they can't have any on-street parking.
Would that be something that we could clarify in the business licensing, Mr. Wall?
Yeah, for sure. If that's the direction council wants to go, And that's where we just need some clarity from council on where you want to go. You can definitely set that regulation where Airbnbs have to provide off-street parking for all of the vehicles that attend.
Through the business license,
But through the zoning bylaw.
through the zoning bylaw still.
Through this, and then it would come through to the business license application as well, and the information that goes out.
Okay, Councillor Norbury.
I'd like to have a little more option for potential tourists that come into our town. I don't think there's an issue with having potentially 1 or 2 vehicles on the roadside. Yeah, I understand that it may be an inconvenience, but it's not something that we say to our residents like, oh, you're not allowed to be on the street. Like if I come over to my house, park on the street, it's totally fine. And I think we should have a little more leeway in businesses that are opening up. I think we don't want to limit their ability to operate a successful business in our town. So I think we should have a little more leeway than if you only have 2 parking spots, you only have 2. I'd like to see a little more leeway for that. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Korkalka.
Yeah, I guess kind of the same thing as Councilor Ober, but it's just, if we're gonna change that, I think we also have to look at residential parking as well, because right now, I believe we're allowed to park on the street for up to 24 hours in one spot. So if I have something, and you just kind of mentioned, but whether you have guests coming to your house or not, if I have 2 parking stalls and I have guests spend 3 days in my house, I mean, sure, they have to move their vehicle every 24 hours, but they're allowed to park. So I don't know if we send back staff to come back with the right room when it comes to guests. Because right now, we're saying that we won't do it for Airbnb, but we could do it for residents live in Tunbridge. If they have somebody come visit, they could park on the street for up to 24 hours at one time. You know what I mean? Like, now we're gonna end up with different bylaws. So if I am an Airbnb, maybe I don't list mine on the website, but those are just my guests.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden, do we know who's actually an Airbnb except for the ones that register as an Airbnb and advertise? The ones that don't advertise or register.
I see what you're saying. I do agree with Councillor Norbury. I think we should send this back to staff to come back with a couple more options there. Councillor Howe, did you have something?
I mean, this is what the debate is for, is to try to hash these ideas out and come up with a solution that works. I mean, I'm not for Airbnbs right from the get-go, but it was the will of council, and I'm trying to find an amendable way that it can work for the residents of Tunbridge, and that to me is an amendable way, is to keep all the vehicles on the street. I think there's a considerable difference between somebody that comes to visit my home for 3 days and somebody that rents a home that doesn't know the rules and regulations and bylaws as a guest coming and visiting for the town. And that's from experience. I've seen it in my neighborhood, folks that are doing that type of stuff. There's some onus on the homeowner. You can come back to me and I can receive a ticket if I don't have my garbage properly disposed of, or I've kept my yard untidy. You know where to go. I'm right there. Some of these Airbnbs are absentee landlords. They're not even there. Some of them, they live in the house. So that is another portion to this all as well. Is, if you live in the house and you rent out a room, are you required to have your 2 parking stalls and 1 additional? That to me is the way that it should be. And that is an advertisement that they put on Airbnb to say we rent out 1 room in our house. Well, they are required to have 2 for themselves by every house and 1 additional. And that's where we kind of get into a bit of a gray area, where if they're just renting a house out and it sleeps 8, you have to have 8 parking stalls. Can you even put in 8 parking stalls? So
Not too many houses, that's for sure. Mr. Wall?
But the difficulty in the way these establishments can be booked with all the different permutations, I think if council's going down this road, the only way you're going to reach a satisfactory ending is to say we're willing to accept X amount of street parking from an Airbnb. And that X could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever number it happens to be. I don't see us being able to wordsmith this around guest houses and guest rooms and all that kind of stuff, just because you can book these things in so many different ways. So maybe I'd encourage you guys to talk about, we're willing to accept this amount of street parking per establishment.
Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yeah, I kind of encourage the debate that we're having now instead of having to defer this to another meeting with feedback from staff again, because I think we're really close, and to put in another 35 minutes or 30 minutes another time, I think we should come up with a number tonight and that we all can agree on and then move on, because we're gonna have a report come back to staff, and the wording still might not be right, and we're gonna debate it again. So I think we're pretty close here, and I think we can all get on common ground fairly quickly here, and resolve this. Like it's not gonna be the be all end all, but I think we can have a good solution here.
Okay, Councillor Howell?
Yeah, and I could agree with Councilor Brzezinski on that,
And to me, my number is 0, and I think that shows to our residents that have been here for a long time that, you know, we're not expecting an Airbnb to move in next door to them with all the bad press that Airbnbs are getting in the news here in the last few months. That would be an opportunity for us to show to our residents that we respect that you've chosen to purchase, buy, and pay taxes in this little area on this home, not expecting that we're gonna change the rules and put a business in next door to you. So as that compensation, we are going to make sure that they're not allowed to park on street at all. And I could accept that to move forward on. And as long as any vehicles that are parked off street, they have to be on a hard surface. Like, I don't want to see Airbnbs have 2 in the driveway and 3 across the grass, and the grass all destroyed. Like, I think that that's something that, you know, it has to be on a hard packed surface.
Councillor Norbury?
So I'd like to see the parking spaces be for the amount of rental suites plus 1 on the street. And, you know, to yourself, Councillor Howell, there is no bylaw that says people can, you know, park on where they want. You know, I checked the stat. It's currently one of those big areas that's just open. You can park on them. You can park there. So, like, that is maybe an issue. That is something that we should be addressing in a different bylaw. But yeah, for myself, number of rental suites plus 1 allowable on the street to be moved every 24 hours.
Awesome. Okay. Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'm starting to lean towards Councillor Howe's recommendation, just because every home is different. There's more units in every home, so if you only have 2 parking spaces in your driveway, that's all you can provide. That's going to be the stipulation. Whether you have 6 units or 4 units or 3 units in your home. If you got enough to fit 4 vehicles, then you can say that. You can put that in your stipulation when you're putting your short-term rental up for rent. So I think it's just based on per driveway size. It's plain and simple. And then you're not getting into how many rooms and you're renting out, and because every time it's going to be a group of people and they're going to be using that home. It's not going to be 2 different sets of people or 2 different overlaps or timelines. So that's just my opinion. So just based on driveway size.
Okay, so we have motion for 1 parking stall per guest room. So I think we should defeat that and just come up with a number for on-street parking for these short-term rentals. So call the question on the motion at hand. 1 parking stall per guest room. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated? Councillor Howe, did you want to make a motion on the on-street parking?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to word this, but, you know, the flavor of it is that your driveway will have to dictate the amount of rentals you have. And there should be 0 on-street parking, and if that, like Councillor Norbury says, there's nothing in the bylaw that says you can't park on your lawn, well, that's gonna have to be defined in this as well too. I always thought you had to have a minimum of 2 hard surfaces to park on before you could park on your grass or whatever. I thought that was part of the bylaw, but I don't know how to word it.
Okay,
That's what I'd like to see, but.
okay, Mr. Wall?
You can go with that zoning amendment bylaw number 685/2020 be amended to reflect no on-street parking for short-term rentals.
I like it.
Then if council wants to debate the number, you can just pass an amending motion to that to change it from no to 1, 2, 3, whatever.
Okay, I'll move that. Seconder, please. Councillor Lehman, any more comments?
Can I just have a minute to think about that for a second? Well, my concern is, okay, I'll
Like,
just,
he was checking it.
my concern is with visitors, like it's been stated.
But it's defined as short-term rentals.
Correct.
Mhm.
I'm a snowmobiler in Tumbler Ridge.
and I wanna call my snowmobile buddy to come up and come have a beer with me,
And he is not allowed to come park in front of my house. I wanna think about that, cause that's what we're saying. We're saying no parking in front of that. Yeah, that's what we're saying. That's the way that's why I wanted to think about it. That's to me, there's no on-street parking for renters.
Councillor Norbury,
We're just talking about Airbnb specific.
short-term rentals.
short-term rentals.
Councillor Kukoc.
But if you were doing a short-term rental at one of our units here in Tumblr, you invite somebody up from Tumblr Ridge, or wherever they come to visit you, right? They're not staying in the dwelling.
No, I know they're not staying in that dwelling, but how do we get bylawed? I don't know.
I think that's us getting too involved. I mean, how's bylaw going to determine if that person's staying there or not? I think that's something.
I
Whether they
know
tie
that.
the tires or whatever and realize that guy's been in 3 days.
Mr. Wall.
So if you're running a short-term rental, you have to keep a guest registry. So we'll know if people are staying at that as a business, and we have the right to go and check those. It's part of the regulations that you have to have somebody that's able to respond to a district inquiry within 15 minutes. So, we can find that information out if that were to be the case. So this regulation would not prevent you in your own home from bringing in your family, bringing in your friends, having them stay at your place. And you can bring in 15 people and 15 cars and do on-street parking. But if you're a short-term rental and this passes, you couldn't have any on-street parking from that short-term rental. Could you get into a point where people are trying to game the system of I'm staying at my home and these are actually my buddies and they're not paying me? And yeah, every business can lie on, talk to the CRA how many people lie on their taxes. But it would do what council's asking to be done.
Councillor Howe.
Just one thing to remember though is that most of the instances of difficulty finding parking and the problems we've had in parking aren't short-term or rental related, they're the long-term rentals, the crew houses, where even if you're in 2 weeks gone, you're in 2 weeks, you're out 2 weeks. Those places are not going to be getting their short-term rental business licenses, they're not going to be getting insurance on those things, those are just rental agreements. And those multi-week rental agreements are they're unregulated by this, so that will continue. This is only going to be for the short-term rentals.
Right. Councillor Howe.
And then also, in my mind, I've seen some press there in Toronto where somebody goes and gets a short-term rental and has a house party. And there's dozens and dozens of vehicles up and down the street, and there's
Violence, and they trash the house and then they leave. So to me, that this is almost an opportunity as well to
try to prevent some of that. Like if all of a sudden this
streets full of vehicles.
and the people living in the neighborhood know that is an Airbnb, they can then call up, get a hold of bylaw and say, listen, there's something going on here. And they know the regulation that they're not allowed to do that. And you've got to have somebody reply in 15 minutes. Then I think the motion as it stands would probably work.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, new business. Monkman RV Park 2020 RFP. Report from the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 3rd, 2020, seeking approval of the Monkman RV Park RFP number 2020-1. Recommendation, please. Councillor Lehman.
That council approves the Monkman RV Park request for proposal number 2020-1 as presented.
Before that's seconded,
Yes.
council, you just made the amendment to the second reading on the last bylaw. We still need to do the.
Oh, my apologies. Yep.
And without that being seconded, we don't have to worry about anything. We can just go back.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, council.
Sorry.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so motion to that zoning amendment bylaw number 685-2020 be read for a second time as amended. Seconder, Councillor Kukoc. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wall. Recommendation 9.1. The council approves the Monkman RV Park request for proposal number 2020-1 as presented. Seconder. Councillor Majinski. Comments? Counselor Howe?
Something that just came to me, and I just want to ask staff about it here before I
Vote on this or anything. Would I be, is there any storage of RVs out there? Would I be in any conflict voting on this?
besides like people who rent, like I don't offer what they do, but
Mr. Wall?
We don't offer long-term storage. You're expected, if you're gonna be there, you're expected to be there for the most part. But if you wanted to pay the daily rates to have long-term storage there, you could. It wouldn't be economical. I'd say you're probably not. Okay, probably not.
Okay,
I just wanted to check if they're storing them over the winter or anything like that. So
not that I've seen,
And
no.
it's, you know, I don't wanna say that we haven't had that situation before where people will come in and do that, but it's certainly not a long-term solution.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with this.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.2, East River Regional District Economic Development Funding. Report from the Chief Administrative Officer dated February 3rd, 2020 regarding PRRD Economic Development Funding. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
The council receives this report for discussion.
Seconder. Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Carried, thank you. So basically, I'm just looking for council's direction on if you approve of the selections Councilor Kirby has entered us into, and yay or nay, and if the amounts we can fix the amounts if we want to just put in a certain dollar amount in that. So if you could have a breeze over that, please. Councilor Hall?
I have a question about the Tumbler Ridge Global Geopark Society.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the Tumbler Ridge Global Geopark Society, when they were coming in and setting up the Visitor Information Center, that they were not going to be coming in looking for operational funding. Has that changed, or what changed? Sorry, just from staff, that's the memory I have of the Geopark.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the fee for service for the visitor center. Mr. Wall, can you fill us in on that? The fee for service doesn't complete their operational funding.
So going back to the original proposals, I think we had a presentation by Dr. Powell about the geopark, and the geopark was going to be, I think in his mind, and I don't know how far it extended to the rest of the board. I'm not sure if it was the board at the time, but I think at the beginning the idea was the geopark was going to be just a designation, and the museum, the geopark would be run out of the museum was the original idea of what it was going to be. The geopark has grown considerably since that, what it was originally envisioned as, and they're not able to do what they want to do without seeking operational funding. So I'm not sure what relationship that original promise or the people who made that commitment have with the current board, but the operational requirements have changed quite significantly. And it's not something council hasn't noticed either. This is why council, I can't remember, but 3 years ago, 2.5 to 3, where council directed the museum and the geopark to work together and move towards amalgamation, because that was originally what the intent was supposed to be. And I know those discussions are ongoing. So the scope of the geopark is certainly larger than what I think some people had anticipated.
Thank you. Councilor Howell.
And what happens with do we have any idea what happens with the Tumbler Ridge Global Geopark? You know, if we approve our $16,000 and, you know, is the rest covered or what?
So this 16 is the original value for the 4 parties contributing: Area B, Tumbler, Chetwynd, and Taylor. So Area B decreased their amounts for both the museum and the geopark to those certain amounts that are in there now. So just doing the quick math, I think we're going to be a little bit short on that 125 ask. But it is what it is. We can set that number. It's at what it is right there, or we can increase it or decrease it. Councillor Howe.
Just for clarification, the stuff in yellow are decreases?
Those are set numbers. Those aren't
Percentage.
correct. Yeah,
And those have already been agreed to by Area B?
correct. Yeah, Area B was a very large contributor last year as well to both organizations. Very big supporter, which is appreciated. One change that I do know of as well, City of Dawson Creek doctor recruitment initiative has pulled out of that because of the large contribution. So I believe that one will be off the table. So just for my opinion, I agree with all the items that Councillor Kirby has put us into, except for I don't believe we need to go into the Love Northern BC request by City of Dawson Creek, as we provide funding for that program in Tumbler Ridge, as well as NDIT tops it up as well. Mr. Wall, did you have a comment? Sorry, I thought I saw it in your hand. So I'll be recommending to opt out of that one. Councillor Norbury?
I'll second that.
Yeah, we don't have to motion it. No, I just need direction from council if council's good with all these numbers, or if we want to set numbers or what. Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, I think Councillor Kirby did a good job in opting in on programs that we should be part of. With
Okay.
The Gotta Go project.
Gotta Go project is an initiative to try and get more bathroom facilities along Alaska Highway. Great name. Very true.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Howe?
And that is only along the Alaska Highway?
Correct. North of Fort St. John, yeah. There is currently one at mile 80, I believe. Very hefty price tag. They call it the $1 million bathroom, so it's true. I wouldn't say they're of that quality, but it cost $1 million to get that on there. Yeah. There's many names, for sure. Councillor Howe.
Well, in that one in particular, $13,000, I'm not really in support of spending that kind of money towards bathrooms north of Fort St. John.
Would you still be in support of opting in on that, just a lower number, or?
Not really. I don't really think that affects us.
Okay, but think about the or optics of it as well, right? We've got,
point of order, sir.
Let's get Piece of chair.
okay, point of order for what?
There's a lot of crosstalk going on between, I believe there's other councillors who are trying to raise.
Okay, okay, thank you. No, I just wanted to bring in the optics of, like Area B is a big supporter of our community and our initiatives, and this is something that's dear to her heart as far as wanting to get this program going. So, there is some optics there. Councillor Kukalka.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. I think the same thing. I look at Area B and the contributions towards the Global Geopark, Tumbler Museum, the stuff that we've asked, and she has always been a great supporter of Tumbler Ridge and the stuff that we've asked for. I think we should also support her if we can. I like that we're supporting her initiatives. I think that shows some working together. Like I said, I hope in the future that we see Dawson Creek and Hudson Hope and these guys come on with the museum and the geopark. I mean, they're not just for Tumble Ridge. I mean, our geopark has gone. Running areas, I think you'll see it more and more as the years progress. And same with the Tumble Ridge Museum Foundation. They were here as a delegation and stating how they're going to start doing outreaches. And I mean, that's not in Tumble Ridge. That's going to be the outlying community, Dawson Creek, Fort St. John. So, you know, once they see that happen, hopefully in 2021's budget, you see them jump on for funding the museum and the geopark when they realize how much they're going to contribute to the communities. I mean, Hudson Hope's kind of a little concerned that they're not jumping in on the Tumble Ridge Museum Foundation. When they were down there and did a dig, it was in their own community. It's kind of weird. I wonder. I mean, I didn't watch PRD, but I'm hoping it's about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wasn't there last time. We'll be there on Thursday though. Councilor Kalka.
But I did, and I echo Councilor Norbert's things. I think Councilor Kirby selected the items that I mean, I can definitely support the stuff that she's put down in here. I don't see an issue from my side, anyways, and from our taxpayers.
Councilor Howe.
Yeah, so the electoral B area, you know, a little, I'll scratch your back, I'll scratch mine. Yeah, okay, I can go with that and see the benefit in that. One question I do have is South Peace Health Services Society Doctor Recruitment Initiative for the city of Dawson Creek. Does that only benefit the city of Dawson Creek with the South Peace Health Services Society? Or would they be able to help us with a doctor as well?
Yeah, that initiative was brought forward at a meeting with South Peace local government electives, and the mayor of Dawson Creek, Mayor Bumstead, is wanting to recruit more doctors to the region, and he's had trips down to UBC in Victoria and asked students what would it take to get you to move north and bring a practice north. And some of the students have said to him that their debt is insurmountable, and a certain size bonus of $50,000 you'd have a lineup of doctors coming up here. So that was kind of the initiative going forward. At the time this was presented, we didn't opt in on this. Yeah, I think there's other ways we can do that besides going this way. This was basically to give South Peace Health Services Societies $50,000 grant funding to try and go down and recruit a doctor for our region.
Okay.
Councillor Howe.
Well, that being said, I mean, if that was the case for us to be able to get a doctor in Tumble Ridge, if we go from 2 to 3 or whatever, I mean, for me as a councillor, I'd have no problem doing $50,000 for Tumble Ridge in a heartbeat. But that is talked about a lot as our #1 priority. So for us to have to give that money to Dawson Creek to go do that, no, I'm not really in favor for that then. But for ourselves, if that is what these students are saying coming out of school, if you give me a $50,000 bonus, I'd be interested in coming there. That's very intriguing to me.
Absolutely. Keep in mind too, we do have, Regional District does fund $100,000 for health for a recruiter. So in my mind, that's really the job of the recruiter, which could possibly be in question as well, because I've been told that Northern Health would have a recruiter without the funding, but has said thank you very much for the funding. Councillor Norbury.
I'm fine with that as it stands. That's not opting in. I believe that we already have a committee. The name eludes me, but we have the board that Councillor Kalka chairs. That's their mandate to look at
the task force. Yeah.
The mayor's task force, and I believe that's where if we're going to be contributing to recruitment of doctors, we should be going through that committee.
I agree. Councillor Howe.
So then the last one I have a question about is the Tumble Ridge Museum Foundation. Our commitment is $37,253, whatever that is the percentage. I would assume up to $110,000. So we've talked about this. I think you were on the phone when we talked about this last time. I don't think you were here in the meeting, but it was to talk about the operational funding request that they came in for to increase it to $220,000, and now you add this $37,000. So now that's an additional $57,000
or over 25% more in funding than what we gave them previous to,
You know, them saying to them, hey, look, can we dial it back a little bit here and, you know, maybe not have 2 paleontologists and whatever
the rhetoric on it was, but are we saying that we are now increasing the funding to their
$57,000
dollars?
over what the 200,000 originally has been for the museum?
That's correct. The regional district funding was motioned and passed last meeting about this would be separate from the 220 over 4 years. Correct.
220 per year for 4 years.
Correct.
80,000.
Correct. Councilor Kalka.
Yeah, so just on that, previously, and even last year, we actually gave money to the Museum Foundation through the PRD. In the same line, same concept, in the previous years as well, we just didn't see it. You know, they were giving 200,000 for the 4 years, and I understand that was previous. We were actually contributing to that as well as giving 200,000 for this community in grant aid, it was grant aid. So this year here, they're asking for 220 through a fee for service. And I know the discussion last meeting was whether the 37,253 would be included in the 220 ask or over the 220 ask.
And
That discussion, I believe, we'll be having it on February 18th.
yeah,
More of a debate. I mean, I debated here too. I mean, to me, I fully support giving the Tumblr Museum Foundation 37,253 within the PRD. Now, if we want to debate whether that should be as a total, come out of the 220 total, I'm good with that debate, but I won't support that.
Oh,
I
that-
think it needs to be separate. I'm going to be honest on that.
yeah, we motioned and passed that it would be separate last meeting. Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the debate really should be, maybe we should be setting a cap, saying how much we want to spend, because I think it's, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, but, you know, we have the ask here of $110,000. We have 50 from B, 22 from Taylor, thank you very much, Taylor and Karen Goodings, and then we have to sort of fill in the gap that's left, right? So
Correct.
I think we should be deciding, yeah, do we want to just fill up that extra, whatever, you know, at $40,000, $30,000, or we keep it at the 37? I think we currently have 37,253. I think we should cap it at that point.
Okay. Yeah,
And that's our
so
commitment, because we do need to support our museum if we want other people to fall in and
Absolutely.
continue that way.
so to put it in reference, last year we had a total of 37,000, and council directed me to cap both the Geopark at 15 and the museum at 10. That's what our contributions were last year. However, we did have more contributors last year. That's why the numbers are lower than this year. So yeah, that would be very useful information to cap it, if everyone's in agreement on that. Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, I think we can go back to the museum debate. We've already had that debate, but you know, if this is what the museum says they need to meet the commitments that our community is asking of them, we owe it to them to give them that chance. So, capped.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Howe?
So, like, we talk about it could be a cap now, but I mean, this is now an additional increase of an additional $27,000 over the previous year. And
You said last year it was 10,000 for the museum, now it's 37,000.
Correct.
Well, it's the
But
same,
we-
it's coming out of the same pocket,
Yes.
right? It's coming
Yes.
out of the Tumblr taxpayers' pockets.
the museum comes in and says we need 220, that's $20,000 more. And then through this pocket, that's an additional $27,000 more. So now we're giving $47,000 more, or almost 25% more to the museum. Based on what? Based on, you know, we had a survey, a poll that came out to the residents of Tumbler Ridge that about 40% of them said they supported, they would support the museum if there was an increase to things for children in there. But I didn't see in that survey that they would support the museum to an additional amount of $50,000.
No, there wasn't any numbers in that survey, yeah.
And perhaps if there were, if we knew the numbers at that time, we would have got a different result on the survey. That's my feeling around Tumbler Ridge, is that people, less than the majority, as what's voted in that referendum, wanted to keep the museum the same way. There wasn't anybody that was talking about we want to increase the funding. Very few. Very few. And that was not on the, and that to me is a little bit of a slippery slope for us this year as we go, yeah, you know, well, just $50,000 more is fine. What happens next year when, you know,
Area B decides, well, we're just gonna go back to $20,000,
and they've lost another pile of funding from the museum? Are we gonna be making up the shortfall again? And that to me was always the fundamental thing. The District of Tumbler Ridge is that we're putting out all this money into this museum to support something that should be supported by the government of British Columbia,
for a repository in Tumbler Ridge to support some of the stuff that we're providing.
I don't know that there's a huge flavor in Tumbler Ridge to increase the funding to the museum by 25%. I don't see it, I don't feel it.
I don't have people banging on my door saying, geez, I hope you guys give the museum a whole pile more money. It's actually quite the opposite from what I hear. You know, people can contend with it, they want the museum to stay, but either way, we gotta remember, however we look at this, it's coming out of the same pocket at the end of the year.
For sure. Yeah, and 37,000 is a fair amount. I would suspect Taylor is going to drop their amount. I don't know if they're going to be able to afford that. So, you know, for me, 37 would be a cap. I don't think we can go any further than that. Last year, the museum didn't get their entire ask because people or communities fix their contribution. Councillor Norbury.
Thank you. I don't think it's completely fair to say we're increasing their funding 25%. I mean, yes, this is a sizable amount, but we're giving, in comparison, $37,000 is not fully 25%. But the other part of that survey was, you know, if we add the second survey option, do you support the museum continuing at its current operational level? And if to still meet those expectations, they do need to get outside funding, right? So we need to also keep that in our minds as well. On that, hey, if we want to get a repository, if we want to see all of these great initiatives that the museum has planned and they want to see, we have to make sure that they have the best opportunity to get there. It's funding. We need to fund them, right? So, you know, but at this point in time, rather than, you know, debate back and forth and argue with each other, should we make a motion that we cap this amount, then we can just vote on it and move on? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for direction, definitely. Yeah, and keep in mind as well too, this amount, Mr. Wall, correct me if I'm wrong, but the amount that we are taxed from PRRD is spread out through all of our, it's not just residential, it's through all of our tax base. So it's not such of a burden on just residential. I'm not sure if everybody was aware of that. Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So by the looks of it, the reason we're putting in that amount is just to top it up to make it even 110,000. So I think for now we should probably leave it there unless Taylor changes their amount or somebody else is willing to jump in, but I don't see that happening. So we can make that debate when in our financials, how much we'd like to lessen potentially when the time comes.
No, this time will be on Thursday at the regional district.
No, for our next meeting.
Fee for service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Korkalka.
Put a motion on the floor that we cap the funding through the PRRD for the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation at $37,000.
37 even.
37,000.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury. All in favor?
Discussion on this?
We've discussed quite a bit here.
Oh, okay.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Is there any other numbers or initiatives that council would like to opt in or out of? Okay, thank you very much. (9.3) Direction for combining lease of 2 restaurants. A report from the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 3rd, 2020 seeking approval to modify how the 2 leases will be executed in the future. Recommendation, please, Councillor Kirkowka.
I'm gonna do the alternate, approves a 1-year lease extension to Club 55 North as per the request and the current lease conditions. And the golf course, community center, restaurant leases remain separated.
Seconder, Councillor Norbury. Comments? Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, so I put the recommendation after receiving a letter from Amber Bell from Club 55 North, and I think it's only fair that if that was in her lease, that we honor that. Her to me, like reading it, her understanding was she was gonna have that option if she so decided. And I think when you get into business for your first year, and whether she invested in some equipment or didn't, I'm not sure, but I think that's only fair for her to think that she was gonna be able to do that. She should be able to have that opportunity.
Councillor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor. As from what I understand, this 1-year extension of lease for the golf course has been permitted many times in the past. I think we should be consistent with that. My comments are actually more towards the community center lease. I think staff identified an issue with the operation of the community center restaurant in that it is a money-losing business over the course of the summer. I think we should take that gem from this report, and that maybe we should be looking at a different lease option very similar to the golf course, and that their expected lease operations would be the let's slide down in here from October to March, and give them that opportunity that, hey, if you want to stay open, you can. You still have to pay the power, et cetera, but you don't have to stay open for the summer, as it is a money-losing venture. And I spoke with the previous operators, and it was just a kind of conversation. It wasn't a serious, hey, would you take this on? But when I brought it up, they laughed. I'm like, oh, why would I, go back to the community center restaurant? We lose money. So, and that might be an option to encourage people to take over that restaurant.
Yeah, that's something to think about for sure. From what I understand, this recommendation from staff is really trying to address possibly that we won't get another proponent to take on the community center. I do think, though, that I do agree with the alternate recommendation, though, that I think we should give it one more chance at RFP and see who is interested to try and take it on. And I think this is the right way to go. And then if there isn't anybody that makes a bid for it, then this might be an option next year. Councillor Kirkowka.
I'm not sure if I missed something, but I haven't read any in my reports that we have a proponent in there at this time.
Pardon me, sorry?
We have a proponent in the community center at this time.
Correct.
Am I missing something in the report that states that we're sending it out to an RFP right now?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, well, you guys are just talking about that, so I was misunderstanding.
The next time it comes up. Councillor Norbury.
I'll clarify to Councillor Kalka. There is a section that's saying they will Game on Eateria will likely cease operations. I guess that is speculation. We're not 100% sure on that fact yet, but it is that.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Howe?
Well, yeah, they've given notice, is what I read. I thought they're done pretty soon myself, but yeah, I agree with that the alternate recommendation as well. Again, I just want council to think about that again. We're sinking all this money into tourism, all this money into the museum. We've just put something in place for Airbnbs because we're having all these tourists to come to town. And this place can't stay open during the summer. It only makes a go of it during hockey season. That's what it seems like to me. During the winter months when people are in the rec center recreating, out of the weather. But yet we continue to funnel all this money towards tourism. And these places can't make it. And we're making it harder for places in Tumbler Ridge to do business by bringing in Airbnbs. I talked to the owner of the Tumbler Ridge Inn, the lady who's running that restaurant over there. And her take on the restaurant is it's gonna look awful silly. This is the words out of her mouth today. That building is gonna look awful silly, all boarded up to a brand new tourism information center if they can't start getting people to come to the restaurant. So to me, if Game On Eateria did make a go of it, and nobody else makes a go of it, I really don't care that we make it easier for anybody else to do business in that community center at this point. I'd rather see the existing businesses that pay taxes in Tumbler Ridge have a better shot at it than us doing anything to make it harder for people to do business in Tumbler Ridge. So
For me, I could care less if anything goes back in the community center at this point.
I think the Lions do a fantastic job downstairs during the hockey season for hot dogs and burgers and breakfast sandwiches and that type of stuff. To me, hey, that's business, that's what happens, right?
Sometimes you can't make a go of it until you get enough population here, and the tourists at this point are just not cutting it for summer hours for this.
Possibly, yep. Okay, call to question on the alternate recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.4, TR Day Society. Sorry, Mr. Wall.
We're certain enough that the lease at the community center is coming to an end, whether it's in March or April, it's coming to an end. Does council want to go out to a full year expression of interest or a half year expression of interest?
Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. How about a seasonal expression of interest, just like the golf course, but flipped for winter months,
With the option.
with the option to extend?
Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier, and looking for that lease between October and March with an option to stay open.
Okay. Councilor Howe.
And I'm more in favor of a full year myself.
Councilor Krokowka.
Yeah, I'm the same aspect. I'm in more of a full year. I don't think, if this, we're tourism and we're getting all these people in, it's another option. I mean, the previous, and I didn't reach out, obviously, Councilor Berry did have a chat maybe with the previous one, maybe it's not the same person I'm thinking of. But, that place used to be open when I first moved to this community. It was open the whole time. It used to be called Sheila's. Before that, it was called Cameron's. And those people made it work because of stuff they did. My understanding, and like I said, I can't speak for her business plan or whether they made money or not, and that's when Oxplay was in there. Anytime I was there or ordered from there, it was busy. So I think it should be a year thing. We should be trying to keep as many businesses going until we can. It shouldn't be an option for 5 or 6 months.
Councilor Howe.
And my concern with seasonal comes down to the taxpayer Tumbleton Ridge losing more money into a building that we continue to sink money into when anybody comes in and out of the restaurant. We had done extensive repairs and changes in that restaurant to accommodate, I'm not sure which, I think it was,
The last one, I believe.
yeah, it doesn't matter, we don't even need to say the name, but we spent a pile of money to do and change the entrances and change things there for them. Then I think there was a certain equipment was put in there and a certain equipment was removed and we had big repair costs in there. Now, if we start doing that every 6 months, well, I need an ice cream parlor in there because it's summer months and we've got to put in ice cream equipment or some special wiring or something for whatever, cappuccino machine or whatever the next thing is that somebody tries to bring in. The taxpayer Tumbler Ridge is continually going to foot the bill as the leasee of that site. And to me, it's we need to get away from continually having to go in there, repair our equipment, replace it with new stuff every time a new one comes in.
Yeah, so I'll put a motion. Would you rather a motion to, sorry?
Isn't there already a motion on the floor?
No. This was just discussion.
Did you already?
So-
I thought it was seconded.
I'll put a motion on the floor that the next RFP be a full year. Seconder, Councilor Lehman. Any other comments? Councilor Howe?
We're not defining it at a year. Can it be longer than a year? Like,
Oh, yeah, just
like,
not season.
Yeah, because like if somebody comes in and says, I want to come to Tumbler Ridge and make a go of my
Right.
pita pit or whatever, and I need 5-year guarantee to do it. We're not going to be stuck at 1 year. This can be longer than that.
Mr. Wall?
Yeah, the current policy is 3 year with an option to renew for 2.
Yeah, so I guess I should have reworded it to
I understand
non-seasonal.
It's not a seasonal lease.
Not a
it's
seasonal
lease,
lease,
but
correct.
it'll be 3 years as per our current policy with a 2-year option to renew.
Correct. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councilor Krokowka.
Maybe we can just ask questions, I guess maybe I read it, I should have clarified before we voted on it, but this would be the time to bring it back if I'm not correct. And that's in regards to the golf course and just issuing it back to Norwood. Last year when they signed it, we actually had this discussion, after the RFPs went out, before they were open, should we do a 3 year, should we not? We said, the motion was no, it should happen next year. So I guess my concern there was when the golf course was signed, why was there an extension for a year for the lease? So when I read that motion, it says as per the previous lease, that year extension will be taken out this year. They won't be able to ask for an extension next year for 1 year, because it would go back out in 2021 for a 3-year lease.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Okay.
Sorry.
9.4, TR Days Society Fairgrounds. A report from the Director of Community Services and Facilities dated February 3rd, 2020, outlining the business case in regards to a lease with TR Days. Councillor Norbury.
The council directs administration to negotiate a 3-year lease agreement with TR Days Society for the purpose of using the fairground for community events commencing March 2nd, 2020 and ending February 29th, 2023. Any future capital investment will be only done at the approval of the district.
Seconder. Councillor Kalka. Comments? Councillor Norbury.
So I put forward the motion and I agree with the motion currently. I think that this is an opportunity for us to see some development in an area that may not be developed. The best analogy comes to hand is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? Like this is an opportunity for something to be developed out there. Yes, we could have there's 1,000 other potentials to be different things, but potential is one thing. This is a for sure thing that we could have some development.
Councillor Kalka.
Yeah, so I think the same thing. I've had lots of conversations with the RD Society, and I support it. I think it's a great opportunity for them to all go out and get grants, whether it's through NDIT or whatever, to start looking at doing some construction out there. One thing we did talk about, and I believe Council talked about a bit, and I did talk to a little bit of TR Days about, and that's the selling the naming rights. I believe we're still waiting for administration to bring forward whether we want to call it sponsorship, naming rights, whatever that is. Yes, my curiosity is when is that?
Mr. Wall. March.
So my discussions there, I guess, and I spoke for myself, not for council. I'm not sure when we debate that, but I think from their side, not just TRD Society, but I think anytime we are going to do leases like this, and there could be stuff that has naming rights to it, where does the money go? So to me, we're giving a lease, or we're going to be voting on a lease to agreement with TRD Society. So my thoughts is, or my opinion there is, and I'm not sure we debated now or then, but if we're going to do naming rights down there, we're coming up with a naming right policy. Whether the money comes to the district for that naming rights, but that money should be earmarked for them. So to me, if there's naming rights that are sold through the TRD Society, or they go out, whether it's them or staff, get naming rights done, and there's $100,000 that has been naming rights done at default for fairgrounds, that money should be jailed out for the TRD Society who's going to hold that lease and it's voted on, to be able to use that for maintenance or whatever they see fit. To me, that goes for the golf course or any other thing, playgrounds. If we decide to do that, should be used for that. How do we debate that, or do we wait till?
Mr. Wall, do you have an idea of what that structure might look like?
I mean, that'll ultimately be up to council. Right now, your on-ice advertising is given towards the community groups. What council wants to do with the next policy that comes will be up to you and would be determined in policy. So this lease wouldn't prevent the naming rights from going in either direction. You could decide in March, and I think that would be the time to have that debate is in March, where you want the revenue to go from these types of policies.
Okay, Councillor Kalka.
So it's just on that, if this gets signed and they take over March 2nd, 2020, before we debate sponsorship or naming rights, is there a clause that's in their contract that states until that's decided by council that all funds of the districts?
Mr. Wall.
All funds from the naming rights, you mean?
Yeah, so let's say they take over March 2nd and this doesn't come forward until March. I guess my concern there is if let's say that's their first priority, is get out and start naming, they get approved right away for a grant build stage in July. And they sell naming rights to it March 20th. That's where my concern is, I guess, is if they get ahead of us before we decide or debate where we would want to see the money go, whether it's back to that place where it's sold, or whether it goes to other organizations.
See what you're saying, yeah. Mr. Wall?
They would not be able to sell the naming rights to this deal without talking to us. It's our naming rights. We may choose to, they may go out and broker this. They may go out and find us a fantastic deal, and we say, thank you very much for doing this, and council says, good on you, here you get to keep the money and do with it what you will. But they cannot sell the naming rights to that facility. They're only leasing it inside the facility.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury. did you have something?
I just wanted to point out that I understand Councillor Kalka's concern. But I mean, if we have a policy coming up in March, we'd be happy to debate it then. But I think we should be debating the merits of the current recommendation and not confusing ourselves with naming rights, because that's a separate issue.
Yeah, it was just clarification. Councillor Kalka.
Yeah, so I don't think it's a different situation. When they were here as a delegation, they actually talked about it. They talked about it, and talking with TRD side, that is one of their financial plans, is the selling rates and naming rights and sponsorships and boards and names on here. That is part of their maybe their accessible funds that they might be looking at to use, and that's why I bring it up now before we sign a lease with them. And you know, when staff gets back to TRD side, they understand that until that policy comes forward for debation, that's in lieu of right now, right? They won't get a bunch of sponsors thinking that money's there, and all of a sudden community council debates this in March, and then the funds end up staying with the district, when they thought that was going to be part of their financial plans going forward to, you know, build things or rent things. That was my concern.
Councillor Norbury.
You know, then to yourself, Councillor Kalka, if knowing that, I'm not saying it is, but if we're playing the speculation game, if we speculate that we are not going to give them the funds, are you going to vote against this recommendation? Like that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, you know, we should be focusing on justice.
Yeah, and that debate will come up in the future. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. It's nice to hear that they're thinking about going out and actually looking for money elsewhere, which is nice. I wish more groups would do that. The other thing I'm wondering about is the paid coordinator. Is that going to come from the events, or is that going to come from the district? Who's going to fund that on all these activities?
Well, ultimately, TR Days will be funding that, compared to their combined funding from everybody. Councillor Korkalka.
So yeah, I can answer a bit of that, because that was one of my concerns as well. So I reached out to TRD side, I had quite a good chat. I mean, they're coming in for a grant made in February 18th meeting. It's in a grant made docket right now, and part of it is to pay for planning events and everything else. And seeing that, and I reached out to them, and my conversation with them is at this point they wouldn't be using those funds for their paid coordinator. They have funds in the bank, plus they have 3 planned events this year that they think will be successful enough to be able to use for their paid coordinator. Now, I don't know, like when February 18 meeting comes up and we debate people service, I think we're gonna need to get clarification on how we make sure that's earmarked not for funds for a paid coordinator. But I did have the same question, I reached right out to TRDs and asked them that question.
Mr. Wall.
Yeah, just on that, council, you would have gotten it and you wouldn't have had a chance to look through it, but there is a grant aid coming through this year for $50,000, and there is funds that allocated. I would caution council to get into, you can't use this funds to pay for this. Once the money goes into an organization, you can't earmark it for anything. That's what led us down a really difficult path with the museum for a long time. So, but there is, I think, $20,000 allocated for 2020 for the part-time coordinator, and 2021 moving forward, it's $50,000 allocated for a full-time program coordinator.
Okay. Any other comments in regards to this recommendation? Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just inquiring on the liability of the fencing to be completed. Will that be part of the administration negotiations and seeing if that has to be done first before they can actually vacate the area, or how does that work?
Mr. Wall.
Going towards
The
Mr. Wall.
fencing needs to be approved by the district, we need to sign off on it. That would be a capital improvement. But we wouldn't require them to complete fencing prior to vacating the property. If they're going to host events on there, I'm not sure, have you had discussions on whether or not we're going to require fencing before we'll allow open to the public?
Yeah, the intent was to, part of the pricing is to have it fully secure and fully enclosed.
This year.
As soon as we have this in place.
And in the budget here, yeah, the budget is here on page 50. I'm on a different, I keep my drafts on page 21. The fencing is to be determined, so it looks like they're trying to allocate that within this year. But it's a good point and something we'll need to talk about, because the district is going to retain some sort of liability over people going in there, and there would be concern, especially at night time, if that edge is not fenced. It's a drop that's significant enough that you can see someone getting very hurt, possibly dying from falling down that ledge. So it's something that we'll need to make sure we're in contact with. One of the items on here that I would be concerned about is just whether or not that funding is there to complete the fencing. I know in talking with the previous owners, or the previous leasees, they were quite shocked at the pricing of fencing in Tumbler Ridge, and specifically that area, because the ground, they couldn't just stick the posts in, it had to be concreted in. But if the TRDs has the money in the bank to undertake this, that would work as well.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just reading here on page 120. Finished fencing back of lot previous piece may not have been stored somewhere. It says in brackets there, T-Pisani to determine whether it exists and where. Has that gone through or not, or if it's maybe possibly covered in snow right now, and if it's actually on the lot or if it's somewhere else for the fencing. And
Yeah, Mr. Waller, are you aware if that entire yard was fenced, or if that section was not fenced?
No, it's not fenced.
Okay. Does that answer your question,
No.
Councillor?
because it says that the page 120 previous pieces not been stored somewhere. So if it wasn't done, that they might have had that material there, but just wasn't put in place.
Gotcha.
If it's somewhere, so that we're not going out and buying more material, that it could be stored somewhere. And
Oh, the fencing material?
yeah, that
There's
could have
no
been
access.
nothing anywhere. Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Howe.
I just have one little bit of a concern with power. The way I understand it, there's power into that building, and I assume that that's all was inspected before it was put in. Is that the plan, that building's gonna be powered and they're gonna be able to utilize that building? Like it's okay for people to occupy that building?
As far as I understand, Mr. Wall, did we have any inspections on that prior and after?
Yeah, we had our building inspector go down. He thinks it's quite a sound building. There's no power hooked up to it now. Power could be installed, but anything that is done, again, we'd be working with the TRDs to make sure it's done to code meets requirements.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I just wonder, is the power still in the ground? Like, or did they peel all that heat? Still in the ground?
Okay. Call to question on the recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, 9.5, approval of the Tumbler Ridge Tourism Strategy 2020, a report from the Director of Economic Development and Tourism dated February 10th, 2020 to seek approval of the Tumbler Ridge Tourism Strategy 2020. Mr. Wall.
Yeah, we have a presentation. Council.
Excellent. Yes, please.
I suppose.
Let's talk for a little bit.
Welcome.
Thank you. Give you guys a break. So,
15.
thank you for this opportunity to indulge you with just giving you a brief overview of what we're proposing for the next 5-year tourism strategy. So to get started, I'd like to quickly just run through some of the main achievements of the 2014 strategy to set the stage for how we're going to move forward, or how we're proposing to move forward. So back in 2014, I'm sure most of you up there will be more than aware that things were a little different to what they are right now. We were still an aspiring geopark, and I think that came through officially awarded to us later that year. And within a month or two of this tourism strategy being approved by the previous council, the mines shut down. I think it was April of 2014. I think it was when the mines closed. So things were a little different. So we have achieved most of the recommendations which were contained in the 2014 tourism strategy. We now have, for example, the tourism advisory committee. We didn't have that before, so that was bringing together a lot of the various groups, organisations that previously weren't necessarily talking with each other as much as they should. We've certainly built up a lot of our regional collaborations regionally, and we have rebranded the community and rolled that out. I came into Tumbler Ridge right at the tail end of the rebranding exercise, and it's been my responsibility since then to have rolled it out. So hopefully you've seen a lot of the new signage around town, the wayfinding, the visitor centre signs, the trail signs, and also I received and installed the Green Highway BC Parks sign. So you know, there's a lot of work that's been undertaken, and obviously now I'm working on the new welcome sites. In addition to that, enhanced marketing initiatives. You've seen we introduced the new Visitor Guide 2017 and a lot of other initiatives, and the 2020 edition is printed as we speak. So we're in a position right now where we've achieved most of the recommendations. There are a few projects which were identified in the 2014 strategy that are ongoing. Data gathering, for example, you know, we do that. There are opportunities for us to build on that, improve that, and utilize up-to-date information for future projects. Another recommendation was the MRDT, that's a hotel bedroom tax. That's usually most communities that use it, both large and small, so there are communities of our size that do use the MRDT. But it's a big undertaking to introduce it. That's one of the reasons we did look into it 2 or 3 years ago, and realised it was a pretty front-heavy project, and to implement it would require that to be a strategic priority for subsequent year. So that's been rolled forward into the 2020 strategy. Again, it's a holy grail really, is building visitor packages. Sounds easy and it should be easy, but it's proven to be elusive in some capacity. So we're still working on that to have shelf-ready packages for visitors to enjoy. I don't need to go into the PRPRC and the museum. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Again, festivals and events, you know, that's something which requires more work, and we were just talking about that just now. So I would like to see more work done there, and looking at opportunities to expand the shoulder seasons into quieter periods of the year. Events have the opportunity to support our hotels, our restaurants, and to hopefully increase our vacancy rates, reduce our vacancy rates. The mountain bike strategy, that's obviously that's pretty high profile now being implemented, so I won't go into that. And a lot of work is already going into growing our Aboriginal cultural tourism products. The Geopark particularly is leading on that, so that is happening behind the scenes. So moving forward to the 2020 strategy, I'll just give you a brief overview of how we came to where we are now. So if one of Council's strategic priorities for 2019 was to create a new tourism strategy. And as a result of that, in the spring, early summer of last year, I released an RFP, and I put in some pretty stringent requirements into the strategy that I wanted it to be integrated into all of the other documents. I didn't want it to be a marginalized strategy which would sit on the side and never get utilized. So it is now incorporated and integrated into many of the other plans, and you'll see the secondary research. They spent they spend a lot of energy researching our OCPs, tourism strategies, a lot of the regional documentation, a lot of our bylaws. So it is very, as I say, very much into that. Once the RFP competition closed, I had a team of 4 people who reviewed with a scoring matrix. They reviewed all of the submissions, and through that, independently, we scored it. There was no conferring, and once we did meet, we tallied the scores, and we awarded the contract to Lionsgate Consulting. So I've talked a little bit about the secondary research, and following that, the consultants came to Tumbler Ridge for a full week in August, and they visited a lot of our sites, Canossa Falls and a lot of other locations, and they also then met with many stakeholders. I think most of you on council met with them. District staff, Tourism Action Committee, well, you can read there. A lot of our local businesses. Dr. Helm obviously was a key stakeholder, and lots of our provincial and regional partners as well. So there are several key features of the strategy that I'd like to highlight. I could spend hours talking about it, but I'd like to just highlight a few. So the main overall headings are developing memorable experiences, marketing, sustainability, and tourism precinct. So, one of our priorities has got to be in the next 5 years is to develop market-ready experiences. It's something which, require a lot of work, proved to be a lot of work. That's something we are focusing on. Another area of strength for us, and I think we've proved it in the last few months and the last few years with the Russians and a few other events, is that when we all pull together, this community really does do a phenomenal job. So we've got an opportunity to grow our sports tourism sector with hockey in particular, but other sectors as well. We need to work to sustain our existing community events. There might be opportunities to grow them and also to expand them possibly into shoulder seasons when, as I say, the hotels, the restaurants are having down periods and having quieter times. And also to grow our niche conferencing sector. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple of slides' time. And again, working with our local First Nations. So those sectors aside, in 5 years' time, when I look back on now, I would like to imagine that there are 3 main areas that we've really, shot it out of the ballpark really. One of them is the snowmobile sector. We need to grow our winter tourism packages and the economy there, because as I said, the hotels, the restaurants, the other businesses are experiencing downtimes then, and to really expand support those businesses, we need to grow the winter economy. Mountain biking, typically it's a wealthy demographic. There are a huge number of business opportunities, spin-off opportunities for businesses in this town to really utilize and benefit from that sector. And the third one for me is the museum. I think there are huge opportunities there, and I for one feel very positive that things are going to move ahead in the coming years with the museum and the programs that they put in place. So marketing is another key area, and I feel there are opportunities to do a better job of integrating a lot of our other economic sectors into our communications. So growing the mining, the windmills, telling the story of that. We cannot differentiate between the paleontology and the mining, for example, because they're 2 sides of the same coin. So we've got opportunities there to really tell the story a lot more succinctly and a lot better. And another area I'd like to do a lot more social media marketing as opposed to printed media, because this, I think, done properly and in a savvy way, we can get much more bang for our buck. Gamification. I'm hoping right now you're not going to ask me too many questions about this, because I need to do a lot more work and research into this. So I hope you'll maintain an open mind. I think there are more opportunities for us to really embrace technology and progressive way of communicating what we have here in using technology and apps and other forms of technology. Again, I think that the Geopark and the museum could probably take a lead on this. Sustainability. So these are sectors, I think, or opportunities that we have in this community which would be low impact but with high potential. So I talked about some of the niche conferences that we could pursue in this community, and I think that if we can get like the dark sky accreditation, which the Geopark is already in progress of applying for, you know, there could be opportunities there to get associated conferences and events to the community. I've touched upon the Museum Foundation with the education. Again, that's low impact but high potential, I believe, to really have very positive benefits to the community. And Dr. Helm has been here several times talking about health in the Geopark, so I don't need to touch upon that, but he's already bringing events in associated with that. Now, Tourism Precinct is a little bit of a tourism bingo for downtown revitalization and growing our downtown. This, you'll see that this is already touched upon in the economic development strategy. You know, a lot of work has been done by Public Works with regards to looking at sidewalk improvements, repaving, beautification. I also delivered on the age-friendly community project last year, so implementing recommendations there which will make the town more accessible for seniors, people with mobility issues. You know, looking at it from a tourism lens, I think there are huge opportunities for us to fulfill a lot of different recommendations. And again, looking from a tourism perspective, we've often discussed pop-up stores, and this is an area that I hope to focus on in 2020, is looking at an innovation center for business startups and supporting home-based businesses who, you know, if we can get them working downtown. So that's something which I am looking into doing in 2020. So to wrap it up, and I think I've gone a little bit over time, I apologize, but I would like to, you know, I feel that this tourism strategy really addresses a huge amount of priorities for the district and the economic development department in general. Through community development, resident attraction, business attraction, and business retention. I think that if we can really succeed in a lot of these initiatives, we will help a lot of the businesses to survive and to make more money. Ultimately, you know, if we can extend shoulder seasons, for example, revitalizing our downtown and making the economy more robust should there be another resource downturn in the future. So just to wrap it up, the main stakeholders, the main partners have all approved this. It's gone to their boards, they've approved the strategy, they feel that they can work with it, they can implement it from their own perspectives. So the only thing lying between us and incorporating it into all of our strategic plans is adoption by Mayor and Council.
Thank you very much, John. Mr. Wall?
Yeah, I'll just make a couple comments. So one of the real strengths of this plan is it's not going out and reinventing anything, it's working with the strengths that we have. It's looking for our partners to do a lot of the work on this. You'll find that most of the work that would be undertaken by the district are in things that we're looking at anyway, the downtown revitalization and items like this. So that's one of the real strengths. One of the, I don't know if you call it weakness, concern, or threat to this type of plan is the overall reliance on the partner groups who are going to be undertaking the growth here of their reliance and support from, financial support from the district. Right now, the tourism industry is, it is funded by the District of Timber, whether that's the TRMF, the Geopark, we're looking at the pump tracks and stuff like that. We are the funders who are putting the money to allow them to go do these projects. So it is taking it out of the district from doing it, but the risk is how long that appetite from the council is going to be there to continue to fund at these levels. It's something I've been talking and working with the groups for years on. It's something I've been talking with council on. If anybody read really quickly, you would have seen what our budget looks like this year and what asset management is meaning for the community. So it's good that we are moving a lot of these things out of the district's purview and into those groups, but it still remains a key underpinning that the district is funding the operational money for these groups to continue to go and do this work. So overall, a really good strategy, something that if implemented, we will continue to grow, and it'll grow outside of the direction of the district, which is what we need. But I do think it's worth council considering that just because it's external to our group or this organization doesn't mean that we are not the ones funding this deal to work then. You know, that's the balance council is going to have to strike with this. I think everybody would agree it would be great if we get to the end of developing all the different things within this tourism strategy, but that end likely doesn't get there without council supporting the groups who are going to do the work. And the question was to council, what amount are you prepared to do that to, and how long are you prepared to do it for?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, John. It was excellent, and I'm very impressed with this report. Thank you very much to Lionsgate as well. Council, any questions? Councilor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I just want to make a comment, and going back to 2014 on the branding and the overview of how the design came about and how we've gone forward and how it's progressed to now. It's probably been proven that we're proud to give away our visitor guides. The biggest success at UBCM was our trade show. These are all part of the promotion of our community. We're all proud of it. Wherever we go, it's recognized now. Part of it is a UNESCO trademark, but going down to the design of our visitor guide, trail signage, we have a cohesive unit going forward, and we should be proud of that because a lot of that's done in-house here. And that's huge because we're not paying somebody down in Prince George or a bigger community to do the full design. Like our visitor guides was done out of house. Now a lot of the design is here, and that's keeping business in our community as well. And that's within our ECDEV department. So I think we should have a big consideration on that, and a big thank you to our staff on that alone.
Oh,
It's huge.
Couldn't agree more. I've entertained many comments that our branding and marketing is top notch. It is, and that is because it's consistent as well. Councillor Howe, did you have a comment?
Just a couple of things here, like there's some keystone projects, like one of the stimulate organic growth of a tourism precinct in the town center by establishing a public gathering space and connecting it to the visitor center and adjacent properties via pedestrian corridor. So something like that, if we approve the tourism package here, how does that type of a thing work? Is that something that just starts happening and we go, hey, what's going on with that corridor we're putting in through here? Or is that something that still comes back to us for discussion? Like I've been in on some of this stuff before where you approve a type of plan and then all of a sudden something starts happening that we weren't maybe aware that was going to happen in it, and then we're told by staff that, hey, that's part of the tourism plan, that you guys approved that. Like,
Yeah, so
I'm just curious how that is going to work.
yeah, I think so. From my understanding, I think the strategy or the plan, this tourism plan is going to direct staff through their strategic planning to give them a direction to go to. The reference that you make reference to there, I believe, is the plan is consistent with the plan of the interpretive center that the Geopark is planning as well. That would be creating a public space. Mr. Wall? Yeah,
just to add on to that, so there's two sides of it. when we need, when we require the funds to do these special projects, we come to council and we ask for those funds. So what you're saying here, where we need a public gathering space, unless they get really inventive, it's gonna reach a budget threshold where they're gonna need to come to council and ask for permission. But that's not to say work doesn't get done with an overall item without coming to council and asking for the funds. Maybe they do find a way to do half of it before we need to get the funds. So there's a little bit of, we have direction, we have authority to go out and do those projects, but we need to work within our budgets, and our budgets don't allow for us to go out and do those major projects. But that also highlights the fact that council should be reviewing these. You don't need to pass this tonight. You don't need to pass this because any of the other groups have passed this. You need to pass this because you're comfortable with it. You think this is the right direction for the community. And if there are aspects within this plan that you don't want complete, let's take them out. Let's talk about it, let's remove them, let's understand why they're there, who it's gonna impact, maybe this is something that's going on from someone else, let's understand it. But if there's things in here that council doesn't want done, that's why it's presented to you for adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Councillor Norbury?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to echo what some of the councillors and yourself said, Mayor. This is an outstanding report that came back from this group. Rather than go through all of the individual things that I like about it, I mean, it's a couple. there are a couple really great points that I'm illuminated by. They talk about which people are matched to which experience. That's outstanding, right? So for the BC people, we're going to do this. For the Alberta people, we're going to do this. For the Europeans, we're going to do this. And there's so much good stuff in here that, I think our Tourism Action Committee or Economic Development Office are going to be busy for the next 5 years. But there's a couple things that I really did want to point out is that the digital influence of today's age is so important. We're talking about looking at social media, and that sort of made me think for a second. Yeah, that's a really great idea, because we're finding out in other conferences, we're finding out more people are accessing physical spaces through their electronic fronts. So, for example, they're going to their websites before they're ever going into the store. They're going in. So it is important that we are continuing to push that. The gaming stuff, we'll see.
Possibility.
I'm about some, about games myself, but there's definitely some opportunities with electronic tours and stuff like that out there. Yeah, I think it's a great plan.
Great. Councillor Kukalka?
Yeah, so just outside of Mr. Wall's comments, maybe we can get an overview of the pop-up shops and the center that or Mr. Wall's EDO was speaking of. What kind of center are we talking about? And he said that was something he's working in 2020. Can we get an overview of what we're talking about in this initiative center for a pop-up shop?
Yep. Mr. Wall?
Yeah, that's been part of the economic development strategy for a few years. Council approved this year's special project for us to move forward on that. So it could be, and again, the work needs to be done on it, but the high level of vision of it is renting or purchasing a space for which businesses can come in and lease it from the district for a short amount of time. So it could be a co-working space where the district would own the building and allow different businesses, startup businesses, to come in and lease a co-working space. It could be retail stores as well. We've got to get an idea of where the market is and what we want to do, but that is the idea. It is in the economic development strategy, and it was a special project approved in this year's budget.
Okay. That answer your question?
And I knew it was already approved as special project. Again, I just, it comes up, and I'm not sure if council was aware of it. I mean, I know it's been talked about. We talked about using the community center one time to try and do this.
Okay. Councillor Howe?
Another point under sustainability that I had no idea about was already happening in Tumbler Ridge, because this is the first time I heard anything about it, is this: consider applying for the International Dark Sky Reserve accreditation from the International Dark Sky Association. And so I did a little research online about it, and it seems to me to be something that has to do with darkening the communities so that you can, have different types of people come here that like to do that type of thing. I don't know if it's for constellations or whatever, but that same type of a thing, is that something that, how does that move forward? in this package? Like, is this something where we go in and we say, oh yeah, you know, we gotta change the lighting in town now if we want to get this international dark sky thing or whatever? Like, I don't. That's maybe like stuff like that is, hey, it's a neat kind of idea. What's the idea there?
Or the implications for the community,
Sure.
Mr. Wall?
So, I mean, a project like that has implications for infrastructure, and again, we're talking about infrastructure spends if it gets to that point. This is something that's being led by the Geopark, and so it may not be that there is any requirement from the district to do anything. You know, we have one of the largest land bases for a community in the province, and once you leave our town by a couple meters, it's pretty dark, so we might meet the requirements already. If there are requirements that we need to change something about the way we light our streets, that would be something that comes back to council and say, okay, well, we can dim these, and there we go, we can turn every second one off, and there we go, or, you know, it's gonna cost us $300,000 across the community in order to put sunglasses on everybody. Right? But, you know, when we get into spending that type of money and that type of community impact, we come to council and have that discussion.
And that's what I guess I'm looking for. When it is that amount of community impact, just because we've approved it here, does that mean that it's hands off at that point? Like that is what my concern is that when we approve something, we don't have any say further down the road. Maybe there's a lot of information in here.
Absolutely.
A lot of information in here to read through. And some of it I agree with, some of it I'm okay, wait and see how that works. But
It's more of a guiding
sure.
document, I believe. Councilor Norbury?
You know, to address specifically the dark sky initiative, from what I understood, it's a star, like a star tracking
Stargazing.
group, right? Like, I've been out on the road down to Southpaw at night, and it's clear as day. You know, like there's no hindrance there. You know, so
Yeah,
I don't see any particular issues.
I certainly wouldn't be in favor of darkening our community at all. It was designed for safety with all the lights in the community. I think we should stick with that for sure. Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. This district and regional tax, the amount of money it would take to get it, like you're talking about getting a consultant to do the application, and then how long would it take to recover that money? And is it something worthwhile pursuing, or is it something that we wouldn't really make enough off of?
Mr. Wall?
There's grant money available to prepare those applications, so that could be, that would go down. As Mr. Powell alluded, this has been something examined by the TAC before, and at the time, TAC decided not to move forward with it, but I think there's a re-examination, so we take a look at it. I know in speaking with Dawson Creek, you know, I had been of the belief that Mr. Powell's trying to convince me it's not that way, that it's not as simple as filling out an application. There's a lot of groundwork. I rolled my eyes a little bit, so it can't be that hard. And I talked to Dawson Creek, and they let me know just how hard this actually is. So this is something that's going to need the support of council before we go. We're not going to try and implement a tax on the hotels if council's not supporting it. Council's not going to support it until we give you the information on the work and the cost we get there. But I do know Northern BC Tourism and the provincial government are really pushing this. They really want communities to get it. I wouldn't be surprised in the future if we go down to, well, I wouldn't be surprised because it's already happened if we go down to the provincial government and ask for funding or help with our Geopark Museum. And the first question they ask is, have you implemented your MRDT yet? So it's something that we need to really take a look at it, see how we can move forward. But we can't, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't unilaterally impose this. There needs to be a vote by the hoteliers, and each room you have consists of a vote, and you need to gather enough support from the hotels in order to implement this. You cannot, council cannot just say we want this and put it in. You need the support of your, at least some level of support from your hotels. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can't remember if it's I can't remember if it's more than 50% of the accommodators or if it's the number of bedrooms.
I seem to remember it being similar to changing the constitution. You need like 50% of the population plus a certain amount of provinces. You need 50% of the bed plus a certain number of the hotels and towns.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Norbury?
Yeah, thank you. And I had some questions about the MRDT. I wasn't didn't really fully understand it at first. It doesn't sound like a new tax that we're going to impose on our residents, but no, it's definitely going to be an added charge on the people staying at the hotels, which does sort of make sense because I remember reading or watching a tourism video, and it was about that tourists, when they come into town, they negatively impact our infrastructure, right? Like they go out, they use the trails, and they use our amenities, and so it ends up costing us to repair these amenities and these services and these infrastructures. So it makes sense that we try and regain some of that money back through this tax that we'll be putting back into that infrastructure and maintaining their experience, because that's why they're here, right? They're here for an experience, and we can maintain that with this added amount, and hopefully the hotels and service providers in town also recognize that importance.
Yep. Any other questions? Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
Up here. That council approve and adopt the 5-year Jungle Ridge Tourism Strategy 2020 entitled Land of the Ancient Footprints, Lands of the New Discoveries, as presented below.
Seconder. Councilor Kalka. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, schedule of meetings. Council have any issues there? Councilor Howell?
What are we doing with the P&P meeting? Like, are we moving everything up now, or can we move the P&P up to the 18th and take the budget meeting and move it like to the 24th?
1 second here. Can you say that again, please? Sorry.
Like, we were supposed to have a P&P tonight.
Correct.
And we changed that to a special meeting to take care of all the stuff from the previous meeting.
Yeah.
Which we still haven't got all that stuff done yet, right? Because there was some stuff that was removed from the agenda. Right?
Yes.
Well, council, the right council.
Yes, that's
reviewed the agenda. We haven't got back to all that stuff yet.
correct.
So we're starting to fall behind on that. Would it be, could we just move the budget meeting up to the 24th of February and move the P&P up to the 18th?
Yeah, one of the other reasons I chose to make this a special meeting too is we only had 2 items to come for the P&P, so it wasn't really a full agenda for a P&P as well. Mr. Wall?
The 2 items were the slides and the correspondence and the tourism plan. So everything that was going to be in the P&P was in this agenda. So we didn't, like, nothing got skipped.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I thought there were a few things that we had discussed in previous meetings that we were gonna move to the next P&P, but
Must be mistaken on that. So we don't even have to worry about the P&P meeting then at all?
Not really, no.
What about the rest of that stuff that was in that agenda that we haven't addressed yet?
That'll be on the 18th.
On the which?
On the next meeting, the 18th. Is that correct, Mr. Wall? Yeah.
Yeah, everything that was moved from this, all the reports that were moved from this agenda are currently on the 18th. So on the, council may have your packages. Or were they
They're here.
Yeah, so I think there's 9 reports on there, similar length to this one. Some of them are longer. I think council can get through them. I'm not promising that you can, because some of them may turn into lengthy discussions. But by the end of that meeting, if something needs to get moved off either in an extra meeting at the end of the month or just into the next month, I don't think it's going to be an issue. All the time-sensitive reports are earlier in the agenda, so I'm confident that by that meeting or the first meeting in March we're
Caught up. Yeah, and no delegations or closed on the 18th as well, so should be able to get it. Councilor Norbury?
Yeah, I was gonna thank you, Mr. Wall, for summarizing. I had the same questions. Do we have enough time? Do we have all these issues? And in speaking with staff, I felt that we could get it all done in our current meeting. So rather than add an extra meeting that we may or may not need, see what we get, and if we had a situation like we had last week, well, then we can adjust.
Yep, and we also have the 24th for possible meeting date if, according to how 18th works out. Okay, any other conflicts there? Moving on to notice of motions. Any notice of motions? Councilor Kalka?
That in 2020, the district attends the 2020 FCM event in Toronto. And in 2021, attend the UBCM in Vancouver with a trade show booth. And then a report be prepared for council at the end of 2021 to evaluating the benefit of continued rotating attendance.
Okay, thank you. Any other notice of motions? Okay, 10.1, transport system for ski resorts. Councillor Kirkowka brought forward the following notice of motion at the January 20th, 2020 meeting. Recommendation, please. Councillor Kirkowka.
The staff develop a report and cost for implementing a system to transport residents to Powder King and Bear Mountain ski resorts each once a month during the skiing season.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury. Comments? Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking, and not trying to do it, but just asking for a report is, I waited till after the Russians were here and it was brought up by council to go ahead and book some buses and give it a discount to residents to go to watch a hockey game. We know I've heard it from Councillor Howell myself, I think even in meetings and other residents, that not every student or every adult wants hockey. Not everyone wants to ride a mountain bike or whatever, but we have some people that ski in town. I think this might be something that we can try and see, get the cost back from staff. If it's unreasonable, why do it? I've reached out to some other communities that do it. They get discounts from ski resorts for the ski passes. So, if you're gonna pay $80 at Powder King, but also the staff's able to, we can give that discount back to our residents and then charge a service fee for busing. I'm not looking to come revenue neutral either. That's why I put that there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Is just a question to Councillor Kirkowka. Is this just for the remainder of this season then, or continuing on?
Councillor Kirkowka.
I'd think it'd be for next year. By the time the report comes forward from staff, imagine we're gonna deal with budget, so imagine it'd be a month or so before we see a report. So it'd be something to look for 2020 ski season.
Councillor Norbury.
Thank you, Mary. I support the recommendation as it stands. I think it's a great idea. It gives our residents another option, and that there is a barrier of cost to get out to these locations. It'd be a good way to spread that cost amongst everybody. And I know that some of the groundwork's already been done. Ms. Trudeau in the community center has already looked at potential options. So if staff wants a bit of a jump start, there's definitely a resource there that they could fall on.
Okay, Councillor Howell.
Years ago, this was taken on by the youth center. That's we used to do Powder King trips. There was a van that would meet at the youth center, and that's where we went out of when I was a kid. I don't know if that's an option for them as well, but.
Yep, Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, so I won't say this year because I can't speak for it, but I know previous years, Jeff Cooper used to set up Powder King or wherever they would go, and that's great for the youth center, but I don't even think this could be for some of the adults to go with their families. Moms that their husbands are working or whatever and don't like to drive the highways in the winter. Sure. They have a safe driver on board. Again, it depends what the report comes back saying of the cost of it.
Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So with this report, will there be a schedule going out and seeing how many people have an interest for it? Like, would there be a checklist, or I'm just curious, the size of van, like if the one from the community center or the youth center there, because it's been parked there all winter, hasn't been being used. I think it's a 15-passenger van or 12, might be enough. But if there is a big enough amount of people, like more, like 20, if we even incorporate a stop in Chetwynd, continue on, if we could get that service going there too, helping out there. Because I know there are some buses that come all the way from Prince George or Grand Prairie to Powder King, so, and they're usually full by the time they come into this area. So
Yeah. Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, thank you. So I've actually asked about the youth center and their ski trips, and there was an issue. The high school has the same issue, is that when you have people in your vehicle that are not your direct relation, there does come an issue with insurance, and you can only have a certain amount. So I know that their trips were limited because of that issue. Like, you can't just throw a bunch of people in Rick's truck and drive out anymore. Now the van, I believe, are you talking about the van that's parked outside of the community center? That's, I believe, owned by the children's center, and they use that for cold winter driving to and from the elementary school when it's below -15 because they can't walk the children. So it might be an issue of using that when it's needed.
I know of another van that's sitting though. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering about maybe talking to Golden Arrow, because that's a bus service in town and they have the smaller buses, that might be an option. So,
Yeah, I'm sure they would love to give us a quote. Councillor Kalka?
Yeah, I'm gonna tread this late, I'm gonna apologize anyways, but I'm gonna say it. So I apologize already, but I'm not here to micromanage a report that we're asking for.
huh?
I'm not here to micromanage a report that I'm asking some council support. It is up to staff whether they wanna find a daycare van, museum van, aero vending, I don't care who they find. And I just think that, you know, there's times we get into these discussions and I'm bad for it, I know I am, that's why I say I apologize from, but to me, that's for staff to come back with the board, let them dictate if it's the children's center, they go and see if they wanna make money or whatever, I'm just looking for support. I don't think it matters who they use or who they get.
Councillor Howell?
Right, you know, Councillor Prokopka, I think that, you know, sometimes taking some information from other councillors who have some experience as well doesn't hurt either, right? Staff is not the ultimate perfect, make every report 110%. They have reports that come in that we often say, oh, why didn't you look at this? Why didn't we tell them that, right? So, like, I don't think there's anybody here that's not supporting what you're saying, we're just throwing out some other ideas, and maybe staff is keying in on a few of these as well. And one thing for me to keep in mind is that if this is a business opportunity for somebody, I don't want to be seen as squashing it. And we have a new power sports company over here, I don't know if that's an opportunity for them.
Yep. Okay. Call to question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor's business. Thank you, Councillor Norbury, for your report. Any other councillor business? Councillor Kalka?
I do have one thing, I don't know how we bring it up, but I didn't bring it up as a notice of motion because we've already done our snow removal policy. You know, I've had a few senior residents contact from Hartford Court in regards to when we have heavy snow after Friday's work shift. So like, you know, the last week it was probably a prime example. We had crews on Saturday morning. Obviously, it met calculations for that implementation of our policy. They came in, I guess they did downtown, they did the sidewalks, but they forgot to, or they didn't do this one. I don't think it's on there as a number one, but the problem is there's 2 or 3 residents or 4 residents over there that are scooter bound. So they had no way to get into their residence because they couldn't get onto the trail. So I'm not sure how we add that maybe, or if council agrees that we should add the pathway at least into our parking lot. Once it's plowed, they're able to get onto the sidewalk. So it was a huge concern by 3 residents that are cart bound over there.
Yeah, I agree. Accessibility is a definitely a priority. For some reason, I really don't understand it, but for some reason, we always seem to get a serious blizzard Friday night. I don't get it, but I do want to say that I am very impressed with staff's responding to it on Saturdays and Sundays. Mr. Wall, is there any way that we can prioritize a sidewalk at Hartford Court? Councillor Howell?
Hartford Court, is that the parking lot taken care of by a contractor?
I don't know, Mr. Wall. Yes.
So, you know, maybe what would be amendable to that, if a contractor was already there on Saturday digging that out, that the path added from there to here could be added to that, or
Possibly. Councillor Krakauka.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up, our town was actually out that morning. The sidewalk machine was out as well and did all the downtown sidewalks.
I missed that.
Well, he didn't miss it, or she, or whoever, I don't think it's on our policy, that's a priority one. Where the downtown route is and the main attractions like Monkman, Mackenzie, those are, they don't do the sidewalks up in those areas.
Yeah.
The downtown must be a category, there's one for the sidewalks in downtown core. When they were done, they definitely came to the store, brought me outside and pointed that out. The sidewalks are here, come over here because these 3 residents can't get up. And then, so of course I walked over and realized, yeah. I don't think the contractor was in where they could get out onto the street. It's just that one, there's 2 sidewalks there, but even if we were to put one on there, they could at least get out of the residents.
Okay, Mr. Wall.
I'll follow up with either one of you after this meeting. Get something from the council.
Great, thank you. Any other council business? Councillor Krakauka.
So just on the near future, so my concern is if we get snow on Friday night and it hits our policy button that we need to be out Saturday, or staff needs to be out. Can we not do something to add that in turn so we do not have residents that are seniors that are cart bound, that are stuck in their house? Can't get to the pharmacy, get prescriptions. Bang, whatever it may be on Saturday morning, they need.
Mr.
That
Wall,
was the concern.
Mr. Wall, do we have options on that? Can we prioritize that, but through a motion.
Look at,
Councillor Kirkcalka.
yes, I'm allowed to do it through your motion, still, to me, council has all the information from, because maybe we're missing. It could be temporary, and through the motion temporary, that if crews are outside after a snowfall, that they do that trail until the information comes back to council from staff.
Sounds like a great motion to me. Mr. Wall.
Yeah, I'm gonna give, if you council, I'll give you a pass on this one. This is a pretty minor thing that we can do if the mayor wants to have a conversation with me afterward and say, hey, can we get this done until we get a policy. I'm fine with that. This is a probably 5 extra minutes of work that needs to be done.
And an accessibility issue for sure. Thank you for bringing that forward. Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, I'll back Councilor Kirkcalka up. Like I've talked to residents that literally cannot get out of their homes to get downtown. Like they can't just get up and walk over the snow embankment there. Like they're literally trapped in their homes. Like that's the purpose of the residents over there, is that it's for people. It's for multiple reasons, but most of the people over there they're old, they're infirm. Multiple people that have mobility issues, and we're trapped in there. I think this is something that's quite important.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Don't call me unreasonable next time.
I never have. Ever. I don't even know that word. Any other council business? Okay. Question answer period. Any questions in regards to tonight's agenda?
No question, but I'd like to thank Councillor Kirkcalka for bringing that one up, as I am not yelled at by previous mayors for bringing that issue up, not necessarily there, but just snow clearing for some of the residents.
For sure.
Is there a question there?
No.
You said that.
All right. 15.1 adjournment. Recommendation, please. Councillor Kirkcalka.
The Monday, February 10th, 2020 special council meeting will be adjourned.
Seconder, Councillor Lehman. All in favor? Carried.